Hey kids, howdy and welcome to Conscious Embodiment, Astrology and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. It's April 28th, and if my sister listened to my podcast, I'd say, happy birthday, Kathy. It's my sister's birthday here, the 28th of April. We are in a new lunar cycle, thank God, with the new moon that hit yesterday. And as I always do so, I want to do a question. But I'd like to answer a question about dreaming and aphantasia, something that was really interesting to me that came in as a question, begging the indulgence I usually answer an astrology question, but let us answer Jennifer's very interesting question about dreaming and the mind and aphantasia. So Jennifer writes, Dear Dr. Michael and Zoe, I hope this finds you both well. My dream situation is a bit different. I am not much of a dreamer. I know we all do. It is the remembering of dreams I guess I don't do. Not really. Then she quotes this. My remembering, quotes, of dreams is not seeing the dream. It shows up more in deja vu type moments. A smell or a song will trigger a memory of a dream. At least I think it is a dream. I am not a person that can visualize objects, people, places in my head. I love this. I have recently been TikTok diagnosed.
Yeah, I thought that was so funny.
That's fabulous. With aphantasia, which is the inability to see visually objects in your closed eye mind. I have looked into it, but I don't fully resonate with the definition. For instance, if I was asked if I could picture in my head my grandfather's old red pickup, my answer would be no. However, I can conjure the memories attached to that truck. I can hear the crackle of the AM station through the speakers. I can feel the steering wheel in my hands when he would let me drive it when I was too young to be driving. I can smell the tobacco fields we would drive past with the windows down, and I would spend my summers with them, but I don't see it. So, could this affect my dreaming or my not being able to recall dreams I have had? I listen to the dream segment every week and become a little jealous of the wonderful dreams that are reported. And to hear the way you break them down is just amazing. Thank you for your work in the world, Jennifer. Oh, I love this email. I love the question. So let's just talk about aphantasia for a second, because interestingly enough, I have had a 2-act life in the world of perception in this way. I'll start with, at 39 and 40, I went through a rather remarkable explosion in a kind of spiritual expansion, like on crack, right? Memoir-worthy 18 months of a spiritual shift energetically. In fact, if I had gone to see any Western docs during that year and a half, they would have sent me straight to the mental institution because I was having a break from ordinary space and spent 18 months. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. That's not the point of this talk. The point is that since that time, I have become aphantasic. So for the first 39 years of my life, not only was I powerfully visual when I closed my eyes, my spiritual meditative practice for the first 20 years of my adulthood was incredibly visual. I would picture guides in my mind that were constant and present, and I worked with them visually, and the visual landscape was incredible. And then with all of the shifts and changes that my body and my perception and my mind went through, I am now aphantasic. I cannot picture anything in my mind's eye. Like Jennifer, and this is aphantasia, Jennifer, the idea isn't like some people have the light switched on and some people have the light switched off. It's just that you and I would not see a red truck in our mind's eye, but we would feel the truck. We would know that we're in truck consciousness. So what's fascinating to me, though, and why I'm sort of answering this question by sharing my experience is that my dreaming did not change first half of life to second half of life. My capacity to remember my dreams didn't change when I became aphantasic. But I'm also an unusual person having, had a transformation or a change that caused this in my perceptions. What's fascinating to me about how you describe your experience, Jennifer, is that the way you describe picturing or feeling the idea of an image in your mind and the way you describe the kind of loose way your psyche will remind you of a dream memory with a snippet or a deja vu moment or an idea that you're like, ooh, I think I dreamed this. That seems like you're describing a similar kind of thing, a kind of loose association with dreams that are less permanent in your psyche as visual stories, but that you can tap into the feeling of the dream. And now I'm not speaking, Jennifer, from any place of authority, because this is beyond any, I'm not a brain structure specialist. So I don't know how to answer it authoritatively, but I'm struck by the idea that you experience your dream memory in a similar way that your mind works in the visual experience when your eyes are closed. I would recommend anybody who wants to have a more active memory of dreaming, you have to put a couple of steps together. First and foremost, you have to have the recording device next to your bed so that there's no space in between the impulse to record a dream after you've woken up. I really recommend it's paper and pencil, kids, even though it's a digital world, that if you're looking to trigger the mind into sort of new territory, writing is much more viscerally connected to the conscious-unconscious dynamic where recording into a digital recorder removes a little of that embodied visceral sensibility. That'll change in a few generations when all of us are dead, whoever wrote things down ever.
Oh, no.
But for the moment, if you're going to try to trigger your mind into remembering more dreams, put a journal and a pen or pencil next to your bed. Second thing, set powerful intentions when you go to sleep. Turn going to sleep into more of a sacred ritual so that you're signaling your unconscious that there's something important happening as you approach going to bed, and that you set the literal intention with a written note in your journal. Hey, higher self, I want to remember some dreams, or something more prayerful like, hey, I want to remember my dreams when I wake up in the morning. And here's the most important piece. You have to go to the journal and write something, even if you don't remember a dream.
Oh, like you just go, I do not remember.
I don't remember, exactly. I don't remember anything, right? You're signaling the intention at a deeper level. You're showing your unconscious what your conscious intention is to do, and you're putting your body in the posture to receive the memory. Now, it might not work the first time. I think it would take a couple of, days or weeks, but I'm telling you, people have reported back to me that this works. And this just happened with somebody who's taking one of my classes where, I think it's my shadow class, which is going on right now. This person was like, oh, everybody's sharing their dreams. I want that. And I gave them this guidance. And in 2 or 3 days, they remembered a dream that they could write down.
That quick.
Well, yeah, that was unusual. I've had this experience enough times to know it's a thing, but 3 days passing was surprising
nuts, right?
to me. But think of the stakes, though. Someone is in a class of mine and they covet the idea of receiving dreams. That's a high-stakes desire. And they're in a sacred container of the class's power, which is a bizarre thing that happens when I teach classes digitally. And so, Jennifer, get your journal, put it down next to your bed, set the intention, and go to the journal in the morning and see what happens. But I do think it's fascinating that your dream memory sounds so much like your aphantasia experience. So have at it. So I'm going to start today's pod talking about the new moon from yesterday because it was the beginning of a new lunar cycle, and we talked about it at the end of last week's episode. But today, Monday the 28th, we're right in it. In fact, the new moon took place at 7 degrees of Taurus yesterday around, noonish Pacific time, which means the moon has all of the rest of the 23 degrees of Taurus to move through while staying in the integrity of sun and moon in the same sign. Part of why I'm sharing, again, this new moon energy is that what is imprinted in the new moon describes the whole 28 and a quarter day cycle energetically. And so since the sun and the moon are T-squaring Mars and Pluto right now, I think it's a good idea to remind you that though we are in a grounded, more stable mansion with the sun in Taurus, and though we're in a new moon and a lunar cycle that is more about moving slower, feeling more stable, the fact that the sun and the moon squared both the planet of action and the planet of shadow in the underworld makes this whole lunar cycle one built on conflict, right? Everything's about love, right? Pisces to Aries this year is about bringing the compassion and empathy of Pisces into the fires of Aries. And so the lunar cycle driven by Taurus, also Venus ruled, says we're grounding in our hearts the desire to create a life that's pleasurable, that has some cash and prizes, that has the possibility and the promise of abundance. But the square to the embodiment planets means things have to change in order for you to receive the love and the abundance that's possible. Mars is finishing his cycle this week. It's one of the big things that happens later in the week. So that's crucial for understanding the sun and the moon yesterday squaring Mars means we're working out this lunar cycle, the new ways we want to walk and embody our lives, right? The sun and the moon together says we're moving in a new direction, but square Mars says that direction is going to be changing this lunar cycle. And the sun and the moon squaring Pluto brings the higher self into the mix, where change is as deep as it needs to go in order for our bodies to sort of move with greater love. The fact that this lunar cycle, because it's got sun and moon in Taurus, that the promise of the cycle is grounding more heart-centered, loving stability, right, in our lives, in our path, in our journey. That said, inside of this lunar cycle, Venus is going to move out of the place where she's most comfortable in Pisces and into Aries where she's not comfortable at all, which is part of the theme of the year. How do we learn to bring love into circumstances and environments that feel less than loving? What's really funny, I don't know if funny is the right word, but what it's elegant to me that like right before the new moon in Gemini in the next lunar cycle is when Saturn will leave Pisces and enter Aries, which is a very disruptive shift in the year where the consciousness of our karmic lessons and what we're learning and is changing, right? It's a big moment when Saturn changes signs, made even bigger this year because of the Pisces-Aries phenomenon. So this is it. This is the last lunar cycle before what I've been calling the hot summer, right? Because Saturn into Aries is more fire in like the immediate boots on the ground experience. You're going to see a lot of things heat up once we get into that next lunar cycle. So in the spirit of things that are preparatory, meaning we're being taken through personal cycles that are preparing us to meet the world's demands later this summer and next year, this is like our last last chance for gas before the freeway or something. What is that? You know what I'm saying? When you're driving through the desert, it says last chance before blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
This is our last lunar cycle where we're going to be easily invited forward through conflict. I don't mean it's going to be easy, but where the essence of the whole lunar cycle is grounding us in the heart more profoundly so that we can meet what's coming. And then when we talk about the new moon in Gemini in the next lunar cycle, trust me, we're going to be talking about fire and air creating some big change this summer. So the first time we get tested or begin being tested this lunar cycle is Wednesday, when Venus moves into Aries once again. So she's still in her cycle, right? She's wrapping up till like the 15th of May. But it is this Wednesday on the 30th that she moves back into the sign that she started this retrograde in. So it's almost like an opposite experience of Mercury and Venus. Though they hung out together, Mercury is comfortable in Aries and miserable in Pisces, right? So the mind's job has been, we're done with this now, but the mind's job was to sort of bring some measure of mental clarity, even when we are in dreamy land and don't know what's going on. Mercury was sort of taught, well, when you don't know what's going on from the neck up, trust your heart, right? Because they were connected in their retrograde. But Venus is the opposite story. Venus started her journey at the end of January. January 27th was when she was at 24 Pisces. And she moved into Aries, this place that she is not happy in. And on March 1st, she was at 10 degrees of Aries, and that's when she turned around. So to understand the message and the value of the Venus retrograde, we sort of anthropomorphize it. What was she saying? She was saying, I'm burning up here. I can't find the love that is my way. I've got to go back to the place where love and forgiveness and compassion and empathy are all that there is. So she dipped back into Pisces, where she's been for the last couple of weeks, helping us really find the place inside of us where unconditional love lives. Now, starting Wednesday through the 15th of May, she's moving from 0 Aries back to 10 Aries where she started, right? So we still have a couple of weeks of wrapping up issues that Venus brought to us and took us through during her backward motion, but the timbre changes completely. And it does become a matter of, finding ways to be more gentle, loving, and forgiving when you're triggered, when the fires are, heating you up. Now, Mars, who's back in Leo, gets to 6 degrees of Leo on Thursday. That's where he started. So Mars was in Leo, sort of showing us how to center ourselves out in the world, put our leadership hat on, and put more creativity and joy into our projects and goals and ambitions of what we want to do with our body. So Mars was anthropomorphized to say, well, I need to know a little bit more how to care for myself so that I can put myself out there more powerfully. And he retrograded back into Cancer. Mars is not happy in Cancer, but from like December 6th to February 24th, he was moving backwards back into Cancer. And then he went direct at the end of February. And this Thursday, it's done. It's done. It's done. It's done. It's done. There's no triple transits after last week's. And so it's an interesting moment where these triple personal planet retrograde cycles have been discombobulating as fuck. So it's ironic that just as Mercury's done and has been for a few weeks. Mars finishes up in the middle of this week, but Venus, who's still wrapping up, has to go into the place where she's most uncomfortable. So that's fascinating to me, that we're like doing this trade-off from mind then to body and now to heart, where we're still learning how to get more congruent, mind, body, and heart, and comfortable in all environments, whether they are restful and helpful to the body, or centering the body in Leo, or, Venus trying to figure out how to stay loving when the fires rage. So then it's very interesting to me what's happening with Venus on Friday, making this week sort of really an interesting handoff between our Mars experience and our Venus experience. So I love what's happening on Friday. Venus moves into Aries on Thursday, and by the next day, she's moved far enough in to conjunct Neptune. Neptune is the planet of the unconscious and creative inspiration and all of the value that comes when we understand that most of life is a mystery and is unknown to us through the unconscious. But when we tap into a spiritual practice and allowing inspiration to flow through us, we have a richer life. We're in a generational change now with Neptune having moved into Aries. 14 years of this, although he'll track back into Pisces again at the end of the year and then move into Aries in earnest next year. The generational change is we are now on fire with our beliefs and ideologies and the desires that we have for the collective. And you can see it. You can see it in the world, events. There's more activism happening. And it literally started the day that Neptune moved into Aries. That was the day that Cory Booker filibustered.
Oh, wow.
See, that's Neptune in Aries. Beliefs and ideologies in Aries can turn into loud, activated voices. And you always see something in the world landscape when a planet changes signs. So the fact that Venus is conjuncting Neptune in Aries tells a really interesting story about how we are all experiencing love in the heart. Venus and Neptune have come together by conjunction 2 times already. This happens frequently because Venus moves fast, but because it's a retrograde cycle, the idea that Venus is meeting up with the great spirit planet means that there's, in earnest, we are working to get our heart centers directly connected to the spiritual energy that we can muster and awaken in our bodies. So this happened back on February 1st, and then again on March 27th. So you want to go back to those dates and just see if there's anything that happened in your meditative journey or process, something intuitive or creative in the world of creative inspiration. This is a highly romantic conjunction because Neptune is love in the heart. Venus is love in the heart and Neptune is love of the divine. And so romance is a direct reflection of Venus and Neptune coming together by conjunction or having any geometrical positive relationship. So for those who had burgeoning relationship experiences, this transit might have deepened that through romance. It also might have been, and this week might really be, the more will be revealed consciousness. Because that's something I would always say. Anytime Neptune's in the room, we might want to say, and more will be revealed, because Neptune is the planet that has the sort of the fog bank that rolls in and hides something from view or lifts and reveals something to us. So February 1st and March 27th, they were both in Pisces. So very internal, very much personal about you and your unconscious experience coming into your heartfelt choices. And on Friday, when they wrap this up for the third and final time, they're in Aries. That's remarkable to me because it's like back to anthropomorphizing, right? That's the best way for me to convey the meaning behind cycles and transits. So Venus and Neptune get together on February 1st and they're like musing about more love, right? More love. And they're saying, yes, yes, more love, more love. The key is empathy. Now, I don't know if my audience has noticed this, but every time I've mentioned Pisces and Neptune for the last 3 or 4 podcast episodes, I've used empathy every fucking time. Because you've got people out there in the world of Christianity, that are calling empathy a sin, which the church has done before. This is not new. That's what they do when they're fucking people up. And
I'm rolling my eyes.
Yes, I've no doubt. Right? So with Neptune and Venus coming together in Aries, that's fire. That's going to burn away some of the cloudiness or, romancy things that Venus and Neptune and Pisces may have brought. So with Mars done on Thursday and Venus giving us a kind of dramatic hit of a shift and change that we're working towards, this sort of Thursday, Friday, Saturday is a really good moment to tap into just how are you feeling in your heart? How are you feeling about what you're creating? I mean, we might do that every day as a function of being a human being, but in terms of what the astrology is doing as we move towards the end of the week, take stock of where you're at in all unfoldings in your life and just ask yourself, has something been revealed that I didn't want to look at? And how might I have to act now that I see the writing on the wall? Or if something got activated and you feel moved to maybe do something new or different, just pay attention to what your heart wants, because your heart and the high octave of heart is meeting up at the end of this week in the sign that will mark the next 14, 15 years of spirituality on the planet. If you're paying attention to astrology, then kids, this is a juicy and important moment to acknowledge where your heart is in regard to what it is you're creating with your life. Now, also on Friday is a outer planet transit that marks the entire spring. And this is one of those transits, and there are several of them this year, that only happens once. But because the planet in question, Uranus in this case, is touching the nodes of the moon, it has a powerful reflection of the things that are happening with the zeitgeist and the collective and the movement of the world at large. Because the nodes of the moon are a collective and an individual point, they have a kind of interesting juiciness when they're transited by the general weather. So the north node of the moon represents the collective's movement, like where the whole planet is going, right? In fact, what's juicy about the nodes, and this might be a little complex for some people to get, is that when the nodes are transited by moving planets upstairs in the general astrology that I describe in this podcast and in my dailies, when the nodes are transited, I will speak to people getting messages about their personal dharma and destiny and where you're going next. So from that perspective, with what's happening with Mars and Venus this week and Venus hitting Neptune on Friday, anything that's personally unfolding as a result of what Venus is doing as we get to the weekend will be extra supported to initiate sudden changes that are destined. So, like on Friday, if your relationship bumps to a new level, destined. If your relationship ends because he just wasn't that into you, destined. But we can also pull back and look at outer planets hitting the nodes of the moon to describe the whole collective's movement and important messages about that. So last week we talked all about Saturn hitting the north node of the moon before moving into Aries, which was like a collective-wide demand to understand discipline, responsibility, and what hard work has to be put in to get to where we want to go. Uranus, because that's the agent of fast and sudden change, anything that looks like fast and sudden change in the outside world this year, and there's going to be a lot more, there's already been a lot, is going to funnel directly into a sense of the whole planet being hurtled forward into this destiny that is ours as a collective to carry. And the fact that it's a shit show and going to blow up a little bit as we move further into the year and get through next year means it's like mighty. It's mighty work for us as individuals and individuals who gather in a collective to help this change happen. This transit hitting at the, like right in the beginning of May, sort of mid-spring, is kind of like the hand of the divine sort of thrusting the merry-go-round in the park that you're on at 6 years old, getting sick to your stomach, but you still want daddy to push it faster. That's this sort of Friday. Even just looking at the month of April and these two nodal transits that hit, Saturn directly on the North Node and Uranus sextiling it, is telling a story of the first half of 2025 being a hard road forward that includes sudden, drastic, unexpected changes. And they sort of peak now, and then we get later into the spring and we have other things that will be combustible. But trust that there's some importance to this week, specifically about how you are living in your heart at this time and how well or gracefully or not you are moving through the fast and sudden changes, because they ain't slowing down anytime soon, kids. So have at it.
Did you know that Michael has a daily astro alert? If you enjoy hearing the weekly astrology, you might like knowing more about each day. When you subscribe for the daily astro alerts, you'll get an in-depth explanation of the day's astrology sent right to your email. Subscriptions are only $10 a month, or you can purchase the yearly subscription at the reduced price of $100. To subscribe, head over to michaellennox.com. All right, it's dream segment time. Every week, Dr. Michael will interpret dreams that are sent in via email or take a live caller. If you would like your dream interpreted on the podcast, you can go ahead and email us at dreams@michaellennox.com. Hopefully your dream will make it onto the show. This week we have an email-in dream. This dream is from Christy. Christy says, "Thanks for your vast wisdom on astrology. I've enjoyed your articles and podcasts for a few years now. I also got the pleasure of having you read my natal chart back in February of 2023, and you were correct about me changing jobs the next month." So
Ooh,
funny.
Love that.
I think that's great.
Listen, I got to say, Joe, there's a currency in being accurate.
Yeah.
I hate to admit it, but I love it.
So here's her dream. In my dream, I had gotten a Kelly green Chinese dragon tattoo across my shoulders, just below the nape of my neck. Tail at the left and head at the right, stretched out long. It's more of a cutesy, cartoonish version with its red tongue sticking out of its mouth. I wanted to show someone my tattoo and they didn't want to see it. I got the feeling that they were judging me, like I was foolish to get it as it was permanent, but somehow I felt it wasn't permanent and I could change it. I did show her despite her refusal. She was disgusted. I didn't seem to care much about this woman's opinion. I was then in a garden setting full of grown trees, decorated with hanging buckets of flowers. The buckets also contained light blue colored wispy pieces of fabric, decorating the flowers that looked like wings, but more round in shape. It was beautiful, an absolutely stunning place. There was a younger woman with dark hair there, and she wanted to show me around and teach me things. I wanted to go with her. But I woke up from the dream suddenly around 3 a.m. I was so calm and could see my tattoo and that beautiful tree-filled garden in my mind's eye, and I wanted to go back. So that's it. Always having at it, Christy.
I love that. Oh, Christy. First of all, that place where the tattoo is below the neck and sort of at the top of the shoulders, that's like the wing insertion place. Right? There's some phenomena to this that I've heard people describe. I personally haven't, but it is not impossible for someone to have in their life as a spiritual awakening moment, great sensations in that upper back where her tattoo is, that would be where your wings would be were we winged creatures. I can't not make an astrological reference to the dragon.
Which is what?
Well, in astrology, the nodes of the moon are often called the head and tail of the dragon. This comes more from Vedic astrology, where Vedic astrology has all the same, players that Western astrology has, except for the newly discovered planets, and they have the nodes of the moon as well. Rahu and Ketu are their names. Rahu is the north node, who's thought of as the dragon's head, and Ketu is the south node, thought of as the dragon's tail. And I use this image a lot to talk about why we divide these up into head and tail and what that means for us. So when we're born, we have a dragon's head that has eyes that knows where it wants to go. And we have a dragon's tail that's very powerful muscularly to swish back and forth and propel us through time and space. Yay. But they're not connected.
Yeah.
So, like, for the first 40 years of our life, our tails are flapping, moving us all over the place, but we can't see where we're going. And the head is saying, wait, what are you doing? We're supposed to be going over there, and you're sending us all over the place. And so the beautiful thing that happens in development as we sort of move from our 30s into our 40s is those two bodies get knitted together. And for the latter part of our lives, now the movement of our tails propels us forward where we can actually see where we're going. And given the fact that Christy's been a client as an astrology client, and she listens to the podcast and she's reaching out with this dream, does make my interpreting her dragon through the nodes something I can, I can feel good about that because of how she connects to me. Whereas if I was sitting with somebody else unrelated to my being an astrologer of the podcast, I might not go right to the nodes as dragon. The Western dragon is about hoarding things it has no need for, and the Eastern dragon is about charisma and creative power. So we know it's not a Western dragon. Right. So even the Eastern dragon of charisma and power is not unrelated to the nodes of the moon as an image. But the reason why I love that is because the latter part of the dream does reflect a kind of new awareness of who Christy is and where she's going that is reflected in this dream circumstances where she's, out of fucks to give about what other people think, which is concomitant with somebody who has knitted their Rahu and Ketu together and is flapping their tail in the direction that they know they need to go. The red tongue is interesting to me because it's part of the throat chakra consciousness, right? There's the mouth, so throat chakra, it's about voice and expression. Red is the color of the root chakra, so needs met, safety, and security. But the minute I think of a kind of like mythological figure with a red tongue, I think of Kali and all of the depictions of the feminine power of creation and destruction is almost always black and exhibiting her bright red tongue. So she has the power to generate change from a deeply charismatic place. So that energy is in the dragon imagery for my money. So this latter part of the dream, though, is what's really yummy to me. Partly because this latter part of the dream reveals consciousness in Christy that I want to reflect back and say, good going. Whereas the presence of the dragon tattoo to me is like a promise fulfilled, right? It's just Christy connecting with an inner experience of powerful movement in the world that then gets reflected in the outer, which is sort of why people get tattoos, right? They have an inner idea that they want to express to the outside world, even if it's someplace that can't be seen by the person who has the tattoo there or by others if they're wearing, a shirt. I have a tattoo there. It's freaking beautiful and complex. It's got an astrological wheel and a winged figure and cardinal points. Nobody can see it. I can't even see it. But I know it's there and it expresses something powerful. So that part of the dream is like, yeah, have at it, girl. That's just you coming into your power. Now I'm really engaged with the idea of each little piece. First, I wanted to show it to someone. I love that. That's pride. That's a sense of accomplishment and a desire to be reflected in one's accomplishment. So then there's the other piece of consciousness that comes along that we have to grapple with in life. Sometimes what we have isn't wanted. And how are we going to be with that? I want everybody to be with that the way Christy is being, including the fact that the first little section here is she becomes aware that she's feeling a judgment, right? It doesn't matter if the judgment is real or true or accurate. Like in life, I don't give a shit what the other person does that makes someone feel judged. If they feel judged, it's about how they're feeling and why they feel judged. And in this first part of the dream, it's like, oh, I want to be seen and witnessed, and I don't want to be judged. So there's a part of her that shows up in the dream, the judgy part. The judger always feels judged, right? So how much we judge others is how much we're going to receive judgments from others. And I don't think it needs explanation. I think everybody will get and understand that freeing ourselves from the impact of other people judging us is a victory and changes our lives. When we don't care what other people think of us, we are far more powerful than if we move about the world caring. Something happened to me when I was hearing you say, they said it was permanent, I felt it wasn't. Someone on the outside sort of being judgy, that's permanent, is expressing rigidity, things not moving, people being closed-minded, not seeing what's new and responding newly to it. I felt it wasn't permanent. That's an expression of I am fluid with my beliefs. I am fluid with what I know. When I learn new information, I change my perspective. So I'm not talking about the permanence of tattoos because they're permanent, unless they're not. But in the symbolic world, the judger is saying you've locked yourself into an ideology, and the dreamer, Christy, is saying, no, I haven't. I'm expressing the current landscape, and it can change because it's not permanent. I love I showed it to her anyway, because that to me reflects the sort of confidence of I own my new vision and it's got to be seen in the world. So in this moment, I'm going to show it to you because that's what I'm up to. And the judger is disgusted and the dreamer doesn't care. This is a beautiful description of how it works out in the world, because people are going to judge you.
Right.
Yeah. And you're going to feel an impact of that. And then you can also not care. You know, I know that in the very rare moments when someone sends a criticism or a pushback on social media, I have a feeling about it. At first I feel, embarrassed if I've made a mistake. And then I feel enraged, like you want to die, and then I move into acceptance. Yeah. The whole thing takes about 30 seconds. Now, if social media and my business existed 30 years ago,
you'd be canceled from fighting people
3 times over. Well, that's funny. I used to say that, like, if I had been successful on my TV show in 2003, that should have been successful. We shot 65 shows, Universal Television and Sci-Fi thought they had a hit, but they didn't. We canceled after 3 months. And I used to say, well, it was the best thing that ever happened to me because that Dr. Mike would have been in rehab 3 times over. But now I can say more accurately, that Dr. Mike would have been canceled now. I would have been so canceled. It'd have been like, yeah, he hit on me when I was blah, blah, blah. And, he told me how wonderful I was and spiritual I was. And then he put his hands down my pants. All right, I'm getting way distracted here. So I love that she doesn't care, and how we kind of know that there's a beauty and a value in this moment where she's embodying not caring. We get to this next message of the flowers and the blue wispy decorations, blue, throat chakra, flowers, expression of love and beauty for its own sake. The beautiful, stunning place. So when I hear a dream go from one sort of information offering scene to a scene of idyllic loveliness, then to me, we're telling a story of, if you get this message, you'll get this reward. A new landscape that you don't know your way around, Christy. So a younger woman, that's an aspect of you that's younger, not you or your age, but something that came along a little later, not the judgy part of you. We know where she is. The part of you that knows this area. So we'll just call it the upgrade area. And she's part of you, and she's ready to show you around and teach you things. You said that she has dark hair. That's interesting. I don't know what color your hair is, but if you're lighter hair, the dark hair indicates a kind of shadow. Anything that's different physically from the dreamer means we're in some kind of unknown territory, and this is a part of you that can teach you things. 3 a.m. to wake up is a very sacred hour. Well, it depends on how you look. I understand there's like mythology that 3 a.m. is like a divine hour to wake up. It's also the gallbladder meridian for the circadian cycle. That means you might wake up because you're feeling insecure and angry. But I like the idea that she came out of this dream at a time that was noticeable to her and that she was so calm. Right? That also says that something happened in the dream state that was integrative, because she didn't wake up from the stress of a dream showing her where things were like breaking down. She woke up from a dream that says, look how neatly we have packaged up your recent work on change and transformation, And here you are. You've created a new landscape and you have found the part of you that will show you around and help you move more powerfully into the future.
Thank you for listening to Conscious Embodiment, Astrology and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. You can find us on Apple Music, the iHeartRadio app, and anywhere you find your favorite shows. Head on over to michaellennox.com for information on astrology readings, the Daily Astro Alert subscription, upcoming classes, and to join the mailing list.